like after the day, I felt like this extremely positive vibe, and I also learned a lot, to be honest, from both you and Mindy with regards to just in general everything that goes on. I'll say at the end of the day, you know, we're all done live streaming and everything, but um, a pizza shop that was recommended, and the three of us ended up sitting there. And for me, it was like a couple hours before the Jewish Sabbath, and on the Jewish Sabbath in general, it's a time for us to literally, I mean, that's what the word means. Shabbat means to rest. So I was kind of going in on a really good note, I think, in general, but I would say it was extremely powerful regardless. We had just a phenomenal conversation about the unity. And yes, of course, we're not an organization with regards to psychology. We're just individuals out there, but we're coming together. At the end of the day, we're coming together for the same cause. And I really like the way that you framed some things. I really like what you said about the fight that we're, you know, and yeah, it's unfortunately it's a fight, you know, but it has to be done, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many.
Yeah. All right. Just I want to go over a couple of things, and I'm going to come back to it real quick. So YG123, we're not also streaming to Israel's channel, and the only reason is that when YouTube detects that you're doing the same thing on two different channels, if one of the people doesn't have an awful lot of other content, they'll cause issues there. So it's there's nothing nefarious about this process. It's just that it's much easier and safer if we just stream this on the one channel. And I think that in his you would have seen in his community tab, he was pointing everybody over here, and we're gonna be touting his channel several times throughout the night.
It is the best. It really is the best way to do it, just in general. And the truth is that this is an interview, and it's I'll just say that I'm actually happy for multiple. Yeah, I'm happy for multiple reasons that it's being done on your channel.
Thank you. And there will not be snacks. I apologize for that. No. Okay. You brought up two really good things.
Wendy, really quick, are you lagging on your end? It's a little bit, you're cutting out a little.
I don't think I am. I think that you're showing up blurry for me. So I think that you're having a little bit. Let's ask the chat. So, okay. Are there issues with the broadcast? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear Israel?
Wait, you're 1 second. It's weird. You're cutting out. Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Tell me, I mean, if the people can see me, then great. Otherwise, then I'll try to adjust some stuff. But you guys tell Wendy if you guys can see me.
Yeah. So I think we can see everybody, and they're saying that you're cutting out a little bit. Your video is much stronger now than it was earlier. So I don't know what you changed, but it looks like you're doing much better now. So, all right, I'll continue on. We had with Mindy here, there was a lot of just organic conversation. So it was fun when we got to the organization. I kind of held back, and I let if I go live, and I don't mean this to sound in any way arrogant. If I go live or if I schedule a live, OSA is going to call the organization. They're going to pull the blinds down. And I wanted Mindy to have the I think it's Joy, but I wanted her to be able to shut the blinds. So she was able to get there and shut the blinds. We were also visited by Style Audit 1A, showed up that day. And as Yisroel stated, we were at the org for maybe an hour. We were confronting a few people, challenging them about their beliefs and why they were still in Scientology, and how the rules of Scientology, they weren't following the rules of Scientology. So that was that. And Amy, 100%. Mindy is really amazing. Just a joyful person, right? That I don't know if she can not smile. That it's just glued to her face, and she always emits such joy. And it's a pleasure talking with her. But I loved when after the protest, we all went into the Dunkin' and we sat down and we had a conversation, and it was just really fun. I think that Mindy kept streaming, but it was just great conversation. Really enjoyed what we were talking about. A little bit about, hey, what about Scientology? What do you do? What should I do? What are some good ideas? What are some tips? What brought you out here? So there is that. Ooh, I like that idea. Yeah, YG, I like that. And I'll say that there are some, if they come out, they tend not to want to be vocal or be known for that, that they want to put Scientology behind. Now, I will say there have been several people that have come up to us, and, I didn't go in because of you. So I think that's a big thing as well, right? One of the things that I'm a never in. Israel is a never in. Israel has close personal friends, and one of the reasons why he protests Scientology is he has close personal friends who were impacted by the cult of Scientology. I'm a never in, but I rely upon the second gens to tell us the abuses and the calamities that they've gone through. I can't really talk to the people that are in and talk their language to help them get out. And I would rather than help people heal from the trauma of leaving the cult, I'd rather them just not go in. So I really concentrate a lot on trying to help people not go into into that space. So, and then
How about that guy? That guy that
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. How about that guy that came out? It was super interesting. He was kind of aware of what they were, but he still went in anyway.
Yeah.
His purpose. He was in the city for something else, but I found it pretty fascinating that, like, I don't think we really needed to save him, but I think we did kind of make sure. I felt good walking away. Like, that guy's definitely not going to be, hooked. You know what I'm saying? Like, they can fish as much as they want. He's not going to catch the bait after the conversation you had with him. And one of the things I really like that you do in particular is you talk about the abuses. So people might already know that it's a weird thing. They're weird, they're bizarre, they're this, they're that. But there's severe abuses going on literally every single second that anybody is running any org. It is for real human trafficking.
Correct. 100%. Yep. Jersey, I'll leave that up for just a second. One of the most empowering or impactful moments that I ever received was early on when I was doing this, and I was following people that out of the org, they were green candidates. They had been courted by the organization. I'd walk down the street and I'd try to give them as much information as I could about this. And I could tell that the person, was like, oh, who is this guy following us and all of that. About 3 weeks later, he put a comment onto that particular stream, and he said, hey, I was the guy at 39 minutes that you were talking to, and because of you, I did a lot of research, and I'm not joining the Church of Scientology. And I would say that I'm going to keep doing this. If that's the only thing I ever did, I'm going to say it was that my career as a protester against Scientology is successful, right? I think that I've had other successes since, but that was the first notable acknowledgement of the fact that, somebody didn't go into the cult directly because of the activities that we're doing as protesters. So cool. And then, we
I agree.
over
And I'll even add that. No, you go ahead. So, you're going to tell us. So let me just say this really quickly first. So one of the things that I like that you constantly bring up is that we're not necessarily there to save the people from the, that are in there. They're either going to, they're where they are. It's going to be, not only is it difficult, it's quite possible that it's impossible for us to necessarily save someone that's already in the cult. Now, if someone has doubts in their mind, then our presence does help them. But ultimately, if people got out, and if they're already out, that's a separate that's something that I'm also passionate about with regards to the therapeutic services that I'm hoping maybe I can get set up a little bit better for survivors of the cult. But ultimately, it's very true what you say. The only power that we truly have is to ensure that people understand what they are, who they are, and why they're dangerous.
Yep, 100%. Right. And so the person that we talked to that day, he was there because he was renewing a passport. And one of the things that he had noted is that, they've got 21 precepts, and it's, again, love thy neighbor, golden rule, be nice to others. It's fairly innocuous stuff. At the very lowest level, Scientology is a very welcoming organization. That it would be no different than any Judeo-Christian organization that you walked into. It's like, oh, these are nice people. They've got some good concepts here. It's really as you start climbing that ladder that things go sideways very, very quickly, and that's really where the danger comes in. And it's, to me, very important that we, as Yisroel said, I just want to give them the knowledge so they're aware of what the next steps are going to be, right? And if they make a decision that they want to proceed, that's fine. I've done what I can in that space. All right. So this week, what I wanted to, first of all, I just want to remind everybody that we won't talk about Scientology as much as we normally do. There will be elements that'll, there's, Venn diagram of some of the things that we'll talk about are still rather important in regards to Scientology. But today we're going to talk.
I had cut you off, Wendy, before. You were saying that afterwards, I think you were going to talk about once we were sitting down and talking. I totally had cut you off. I wanted to know what you were going to say about that.
No problem. So dinner was really enjoyable, right? No cameras, no microphones, just three people having a good time, talking about, their experiences both in, we talked about streaming, we talked about our histories, we talked about how, how our upbringing, it was a very organic, enjoyable evening that night. And I was thrilled talking with both Yisroel and Mindy. Just felt natural, like you were sitting at the way I would look at it is when your cousins come over, right? You don't see them in a while, and you just want to kind of reconnect on all the things that you don't get to talk about very often. So, now there will be, again, there was an accident. People lost their lives, and I should have given you a little bit of a warning before this. We won't. We're done kind of talking about the day of process. And what I want people to realize is that because you survive a particular incident, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just somebody who historically has gone through some items, and I listen to other people and I learn from them. And Yisroel, correct me where I'm wrong, but that there's a couple of things. The people that survived, number one, they get survivor's guilt really quickly. Why me and not the person next to me? Why am I still here? And people struggle with that. That's an element that goes on. Then that might be contemporary to when the crash occurs or when the calamity, whatever the incident is, right? You've got some pain that happens rather quickly or guilt that happens rather quickly. Then there's other people where it doesn't really strike them for quite some time, but it does strike them, and it strikes them very tragically, and they will struggle much later on in life because of some of the things that have happened in their past. So the idea that you survive the day doesn't mean you're free and clear, right? That you may in fact still have symptoms and effects of this situation.
Yeah, I not only do I agree with that, these are not it's not like I'm the one that came up with these words the first time, but this concept of surviving survival. The gentleman who wrote the book about the plane crash had also written a book just about, and people don't recognize that it's on a daily basis you're continuing to attempt to survive, and the more that people open up to me, the survivors that open up to me, the more that family members open up to me, I realized, like, I was once in this really intense therapy group, and the therapist, this is a style of therapy, and I'm not saying whether it's, in some ways it could be productive for some.
Hmm. All right. Sorry, we just lost him. Hopefully he's going to realize that. Let me text him real quick to let him know that we've lost him. And if this continues, we'll delay this. I'll wait until we can actually get to. I know that he's usually doing this on a telephone service rather than on Wi-Fi. Oh, he's back. All right.
I don't know what's
Welcome
going
back. Wait, before you.
It's my phone again. We'll see.
No problem. Before you start again, I've let everybody know that, hey, if we continue to struggle, we'll delay this for another day when we can get better communication. But YG123 left a note here, and let's see here. Can you tell Yisroel to say hi to Bracola?
Bracola. Hey, Bracola.
Okay.
That's her daughter. It's a Yiddish name, but yeah.
Nice. And then as we were talking about this, the idea that there might be a time lag in when you encounter the trauma that may have occurred. And Amy mentions that, hey, there's very often it's a delayed reaction.
Oh, so thank you. So I do want to talk about that in a little bit. You're really good at keeping me on track. But what I was going to say is I'm in this therapy group. And it was really intense therapy, and they were trying to help me get back to it. And, we were talking about things that I did during that time that were super unhealthy, right? And I really lost my way, and no one expected it. Like, anybody that knew me growing up, during that time I was struggling, their minds were blown. When I was interviewed by the gentleman the professor who wrote the book Flight 232, he literally met me at a time in my life that, like, when he met me like a couple years later, when I started he couldn't believe it. Like, and I was always frustrated about that. I wanted to have been interviewed at a good time in life, but I'll tell you something. I think it was powerful because he actually got to see me at a horrific time in my life. So he got to see me as an absolute disaster where, there was so much going on, but that was a direct result of the plane accident. Now, shortly after, I'm sitting in this therapy group, and the therapist screamed at me and said, we were talking about in the group therapy, they brought up the plane crash, and then she yelled at me and she said, yeah, well, there were other survivors and they didn't just destroy their lives, da 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 da. And at the time, that was powerful, and I tried to take that to heart. But one of the really sad components of that statement that, she doesn't know, so it's been years since I've seen her, but that really theoretically would have come to bite her back was, all of a sudden I'm talking to the survivors. I haven't met one. I have not met a survivor or a family member of a survivor that did not have a period of time in their life where they literally had what people would call like a midlife crisis. Now, your midlife crisis can happen at 20, your midlife crisis, and there's still people out there right now that have it's not, people say to me, wow, it's amazing you have the courage to go back to the site. So few survivors have the courage. My response to that is very simple. That's just me. For whatever reason, I gained that. It was 25 years I didn't go back. So right. It's not like I'm more courageous than they are. By no means am I more courageous than they are. We all struggle. Some of them are currently struggling in a tremendous way. And this year, this is very public information, but this year, we'll talk a little bit about some of the heroes from that day. But one of the heroes that I always looked to, I was always like, wow, it's amazing that this individual never fell apart. And lo and behold, this year they were honoring her in Sioux City, and openly it was mentioned in the speech that she had the exact same type of crisis in her life that I did, almost the same age that I was. Now, that was 10 years later for her. For me, it didn't happen until about 20 years later where I fell apart. But point is, she was a little bit older already. It seems like that age of about 30, somewhere between 30 and 40 years old, where people that didn't have the initial reaction really had a crisis at that point. So yeah, you're 100% correct on that. And family members as well. I was just talking to my little brother. I'll just quickly share this. I know we're going to get to it, some of the other stuff, but my brother, he was about to be 3 years old, okay, which is a big birthday in the Jewish world. It's just a custom. We don't cut the hair. So like they grow really long hair, the boys, and then on their third birthday, they get a haircut. It's a big deal. That summer, we actually did that hair cutting they allowed me out of the hospital for this in Dayton, Ohio, where my mom is right now. God bless my grandma. Maybe she was like she's one of the greatest people I ever met. My mom actually went to visit and pray by her grave today. My mom was actually in Sioux City. She's in Dayton, Ohio right now. But we did the haircut actually by my grandma, my bubby. That year, I actually, as a joke, I shaved the big bald spot in my brother's because I used to tease him all the time. But he was 3, and he was sitting next to my mom in the car when my mom hears on the radio, "No survivors, no survivors." He's 2 months shy of 3 years old. These memories are clear in his mind. And what he did was he started attacking the radio. He thought the radio was hurting my mom. He didn't know any better, but he recognized. And he still lives with this. And, he's a little kid. And for a very long time, I thought that I knew this affected my older sister tremendously. We're very close in age. I have a sister that's just below me, and I have a brother that's just below her. I did not believe at that time. For a long time, my sister, it's my sister, Rebecca. I have to, I've always she knows that I've recognized the pain that she experienced. She came back with me to Sioux City, Iowa, and God willing, my other sister, Sarah, will come back with me too. I did not recognize how significant the impact was on I call her my baby sister because I'm very protective over my siblings. But, she struggles tremendously as well. She might be watching tonight, actually, which I think is very courageous of her as well. She messaged me earlier that she might pop in. Hopefully she'll feel comfortable to maybe throw up a comment. But, we're talking about little kids, and they weren't even in the crash, and they were affected so tremendously.
Correct. I can't imagine the trauma of even your mother in the instance, the idea, hearing no survivors, that's got to be it for her, right? The idea that, and she has to take it at face value. That must be fact, right?
She was wearing a white dress that day. She was supposed to go to a wedding that night. And, again, like you said, from the face of God, she was, she had right outside of a mechanic that she used to take our cars to. And she ended up, just remember why or whatever, but she unconsciously pulled over knowing that my brother was in the car. And she went to the mechanic and she was unintelligible. Like he said, he did not understand a word that she was saying, not a word. And all of a sudden they turn up at the TV that was in the corner of the room by the waiting room where people are waiting for their cars. And on the TV, they're showing live footage of the plane crash. And my mom just fainted. And, he said a funny joke that she was wearing a white dress and his mechanic hands, there were big black, handprints on my mom's dress. We joke a little bit about that. But
I'm going to ask you a favor.
It was horrific for her.
Can you, so you're still getting bad reception there. Are there places in the house where you get better reception, or places in the condo where you get better reception?
This is usually this is usually perfect. I'm really surprised.
Okay. Do this for me.
It's happening.
Okay. I'm going to put you in the background for just 1 second. And what I'll ask you to do is your iPhone, right?
Okay.
turn off your cellular service and then turn it back
I
on just to
know,
see if it'll
Android.
reconnect. All right. Oh, I don't know how to do
Okay.
that then. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. All right. We'll keep on. We'll plow forward until until the crowd goes wild.
It
So
could be because I'm by the lake and it could be because I'm by the lake and storms, but
okay.
I can try to actually move this a little bit. 1 second. This might help a little bit, actually. Hold on. I'm trying to move the whole camera. It might help, actually. Sometimes the closer I am to the windows.
Yeah. So just to
Hopefully it
restate
continues to work. I
what Israel's
apologize.
saying.
I'm
Oh no,
surprised.
that's perfect. Hey, technology bites us all the time. Don't worry. It's it could be solar spots. Who knows? But mentioned right that his mother's grief stricken. She's wearing a white dress with there's a mechanic's trying to console her. You can imagine that the mechanic doesn't have the cleanest hands because of what his job makes him perform. So it did mess up the dress quite a bit. The other one, you had mentioned that she had seen the crash on TV. And I will tell you that my recollection of that day is that, and this was back in the day when you really only had 3 or 4 news channels. I can't remember if Fox was really doing much yet, but all I saw all day long was that crash, and it was the cartwheeled airplane, going down the runway. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they replayed that a lot.
cool. Let me bring up a quick. So, if there's so much about this story that's been written and that's been memorialized in movies. So, you've got 1,000 Heroes. Let me see if I've got these in the right order. No, there we go. So, 1,000 Heroes. That's going to be James Coburn, Charlton Heston, and then John Boy. What's John Boy's? Thomas, might it be his name?
I think so, yeah. Joey Thomas, yeah.
Richard Thomas, that's what it was, Richard Thomas. And then Fearless. Now, Fearless is very much closer to so Yisroel. This is a little bit more of a fictionalized story of the crash, and what they really pull out of it is this story about a young child who he never has fear of physical harm ever again, and this is really Israel's story, right? For the most part, this is the story of Israel. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have other fears, but social fears are something that'll come on again. But the idea that he'll never again have physical fear, and then crash landing,
and it's very accurate.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to and we saw it earlier because he was talking about the author. So there's Flight 232, A Story of Disaster and Survival. And this is by Lawrence Gonzalez. And one of the people, it was Richard Thomas. Thank you, Tony. So, do you want to talk about Fearless a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a powerful thing. I remember my parents got a phone call from somebody in Hollywood, and they wanted to use my story. And I grew up extremely religious, so we didn't watch television, or we didn't listen to like music on the radio, especially once we moved to Chicago. When we were in Denver. Sorry, I saw that I got cut out there. So when we were in Denver, it was a little more lenient. But once we moved to Chicago, I grew up very. When I say right, I'm not into politics. I'm just referring to the extreme components of religion, and not abusive, like in any sense of the term. This was a choice that both my parents had made to live their lives that way, and it was normal for me growing up without a television. That was normal. So they got a phone call, and they basically just gave them the rights to do whatever they wanted. They just didn't want religion to be into the story, because they felt like that would be, I guess from their religious perspective, they felt like it would be inappropriate. But the idea that there's this little kid on the plane crash that survives, one of the only survivors, and then he no longer has fears, struggle in life. They took that based upon, it was, at the time, it became famous, a few statements that they had made to people in the hospital, lawyers, trying to explain the effect that the plane crash had. It was like my fear of my fear of anything physical happening was gone. But what started to happen is flashbacks became intense. So if I'm on a roller coaster,
you know, folks, I hate to do this, but I think what I'm going to do when Yisroel comes back, I think I'm going to try to suspend this, and we're going to find a way that we can get better, because it's an important story, and I think that it's distracting that we don't have the clear communication. So I will chat with him, let him know. Yeah. So Renoir, Fearless is based on his story. I'm going to bring him back up here. Hey, Yisroel, if I think we're going to continue to struggle with this, so what I might do is figure out if we cut this short, and then we can figure out another time where we can find better connection, because I think it's distracting.
Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah,
okay.
Keep going, and if it doesn't continue, then we'll do that. I have no problem with it. I'm really sorry.
Okay, no problem. So. Renoir, she asked the question, is Fearless based on his story? And it 100% is. So sorry. Fearless is based on Yisroel's story, right? And part of what he was just mentioning is that his family, and not because of a religious constraint, it's just the way that they grew up, is that they didn't really feel the need to profit from what was going on. They liked the story that was going to be told, and they said, "Yeah, you can have the rights to the story." So I think there was a nominal exchange, but it was, Yisroel is not a multi-billionaire because of the rights of this movie that's gone on. But yeah, this is the
not even a half of a penny.
Yeah. So there was no monetary gain, but again, definitely there were several movies made out of this. Some of them, again, a little bit more fictionalized. That was Gonzalez a survivor as well?
No, his neighbor was, and he already was a specialist in mechanics and trauma randomly. And he worked on this book for many years. His neighbor was, he was not.
Yeah. Okay. Howdy, MD Media. Great to have you in here. All right, let me hide that. Let's talk a little bit about
MDMA.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I joke around MD Media. For me, I would say MDMA.
Yep. So, now this next topic is going to be, a little bit heavier. We're going to talk about trauma, and part of the story of trauma is, right, how did it affect Yisroel's parents, Yisroel's family directly, and then additionally, what are some things that we can do to help mitigate trauma? And this has a little bit more of an intersection of, when we think about it, when somebody leaves or survives the cult of Scientology or any other high control group, they're going through trauma at that point in time, and there are tactics, tricks, tips, and therapies that they should be seeking out in that space. So, what specifically? What were the traumas? Did you have any? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying I completely agree with that. No, I was just saying I completely agree with that. The idea, trauma has an effect. And there's, like, you literally could take a brain scan, and one person could have trauma from a high control group, another person from a plane crash, and the brain scan will look very similar with regards to the physiological makeup of your brain once you have survived a traumatic event.
Yep. One thing that I think that we heard this past week, and this was Natalie Webster sharing on one of her streams, is the idea that she had gotten physical therapy for some of the trauma that she had, because she did have physical pains in that space. But it really wasn't until she got to therapy that it resolved some of the problems that physical therapy just wasn't removing that pain. And there is a correlation between what your mind can control and the physical presentation that it has in your body. That it's not just if you do exercises, you'll fix mental, or you'll fix all of your physical problems. What was the trauma? What traumas affected your mom?
I'll say this, there's actually another component that we were going to talk about with regards to the heroes of that day. There was a play that was created. You're
not coming. Yeah, you're not. Just a second. You're not coming through too clearly right now, or at least I'm not hearing it clearly. So I don't think that the audience is. Let's see here. What are some other tips or tricks we can do?
There's got to be. If I go out and come back in, does that help or no?
It might.
Like, would it be easy for me? Would it be easy for me to come right back if I hit on that? Because sometimes if I turn, just literally, my phone just goes through a quick restart. It actually does a lot.
Let's do that. So I'll go ahead and take you off screen, and go ahead and oh, by the way, make sure you're not doing Wi-Fi, because I assume that you're trying to do this over cellular. So don't.
No, I'm not doing. Okay. I'm not doing Wi-Fi. I'm not doing Wi-Fi yet.
All right, I'm going to take you off screen for a bit, and then I'll let you go ahead and see if you can do a reset. All right, folks, it's just you and I am ill-equipped to talk about trauma, other than the fact that if you are experiencing trauma, seek help. Don't suffer alone. Don't suffer in silence. It's real. You're not the only person that is going through this. We've had billions and billions of people who have been on this planet. We've learned a great deal from them. We know treatments, and regardless of what Scientology says, and in their human rights advocacy, where there is no reason for psychiatry and psychology and psychiatric drugs, it's incredibly important that you do take advantage of some of these scientifically proven, tried and true methodologies, which do help you relieve the pain, help you get through the trauma that you may or may not be experiencing in that space. So my word of caution here is, don't suffer in silence, and don't think you're the only person this is happening to. It's happened to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And again, the tragedy may be different. The tragedy may be different, but the cure is the wrong word. The treatment is known and established, given the symptoms. All right, I'll say this. You look much cleaner right now. Your picture looks much cleaner. So
that's good.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, I do have the heroes is kind of the next topic I was going to talk about, but if you want to, we can reverse the order. If you want to talk about the heroes first.
No, well, it intersects. First of all, by the way, there's much less of a lag. Hopefully this really fixed things. You're good at this. You'll let people know, anybody watching on the replay, look at the time mark where we're at, in case they, hopefully it wasn't too bad. But so to answer that, it's Al Haynes was blaming himself. I see that, Michael. Yes, Michael. It's kind of like, well, this is where spirituality pops up, because literally Wendy and I have had that conversation today. Literally today, we had a very specific conversation about the captain and the guilt that the survivor's guilt that he went through. So let me start off with this. Let me start off by saying something. that, I mentioned this in the last time. I answered it, I think, more matter-of-factly. As you were talking earlier, it was hitting me more, which is usually what happens in the beginning. The process is more, streamlined, and then the emotions begin to take over. That's like a known psychological effect in a situation like this. And I'm fully comfortable, guys, with being emotional. I have no issues with that. So I do apologize. I kind of let some out when you took me off the screen for a minute. But what I'll say is this: the gentleman that pulled me out of the aircraft was literally not going to go back to check if there were any other survivors. I mean, it wasn't even like, when he went to pull me back out, what he had to witness was so traumatic that, Dennis Smith, when he came one day, he showed up at the hospital. There's only 2 pictures that my parents allowed to be taken for those first few months. Only 2 pictures. One of the pictures, he came to the hospital. It was, I don't know, probably about a month after the crash. So I wasn't in a bubble anymore. They weren't so worried about the immediate effects of my spine. It was much more my arm, blood loss, and some severe head trauma. But he came to the hospital. It's a picture that I have. I have a picture of me, and I'll send that to you, Wendy. So for next time, you could put that up. So he came and he visited me, and it was a very my parents say the same thing, and I feel they say that I matured like 20 years within like a few weeks after the plane crash. Like I was forced to be an adult and have the experience it through those eyes, because a child can't really process something like that. So the children either were not processing it at all, or they began to process it as an adult. My mother will tell you that I already was very mature for my age. It's part of why they agreed to let me go alone on the plane. But what I'll say is this: when he came back, he pulled me out. I know what he saw because I saw it.
Right.
He was a Vietnam vet. He was a medic in the Army. He came to visit me in the hospital. I remember feeling very off about it. I had met him already. One day he just showed up. And I remember he had mentioned about taking a picture. And we took the picture. And that's the last we ever heard of him. He had horrific flashbacks from Vietnam. And we have not been able to trace him. Every time we go to Sioux City, we don't stop trying to find out. But for all practical purposes, he was gone, What a hero. I mean, like, literally, I remember him saying this, and I wish that he could have been interviewed by Lawrence Gonzalez. But Lawrence Gonzalez says about the gentleman sitting next to me, and talking about survivor's guilt, it's only over the past couple of years where I stopped by nature saying, in the process, I killed this man, and I still feel it. I'm able to catch myself, but typically that's just the way I respond. When I'm hoping that we continue these little interviews until we come to like a real culmination, and I have something powerful to say about that, which we'll come to in the future. But for those of you that are watching the first one and the second one, just keep in mind that it's flight 232. That was the number of the flight. Keep in mind that my seat was switched twice. Keep in mind that I happened to be sitting next to a stranger that completely uninterested in even remotely worrying about himself, completely focused on me. And then you have this medic that's coming out of nowhere and jumping back into just a 6-foot pile of rubble and smoke, about 300 yards away from the rest of the crash site. We rolled 300 yards, and what he had to see that day, he had to say, like, and gives you guys a little warning. Anybody that doesn't want to, hear this type of stuff, by all means, I'll give you a second. But I remember him telling me that, because I asked him, I asked him why he had done certain things, and he stopped for a moment and he realized that question needed to be answered. And
Right.
he was very blunt with me, and he said it was difficult for me to tell what parts were your body, what parts were his body. And in the book, Lawrence Gonzalez writes directly, the words are directly written, that Richard Howard Sutherland, may he rest in peace, what an angel, what an absolute hero and an angel. He acted as a shock absorber for me so that I could survive. He had planned that with the two stewardesses, Susan White and Donna McGrady. Donna McGrady was right behind me. At certain points in the flight, Susan was right there, and at certain points, she was in another part of the aircraft. But those two stewardesses and a couple of heroes, absolute heroes, that were able to think clearly, not be concerned about what's going to happen, but just do their best in that moment to literally do whatever they could. Let's just think about it like that, doing whatever they could. The cap was doing whatever he could in the cockpit. This year was discussed a little bit more detail, how many times each stewardess went to the cockpit, finding out how serious it was. And you guys are more than welcome to see on my stream where a gentleman discusses how Susan White, like, absolutely just what a hero, what an absolute hero, and how she was like concerned about everybody else and everything else, and just like, giving herself up completely to just do whatever she could for those around her. But if you think about the concept that my mom and my brother are in the car, and then you think about the concept that you have a man that's a complete stranger who literally gives up his life, knowingly gives up his life, and his family, his daughter's waiting at home for him for 7 hours because his wife thought that he was going straight from the airport to pick her up, Michelle. And I hope that Michelle eventually has the ability to watch some of these interviews. I really do. I think that it could bring a lot of closure for her as well. But Michelle's his daughter. She was 2 years younger than me. The trauma she endured, the trauma my mom endured. And then you think about this man who had already been, I mean, everybody at this point knows it's not conspiracy theories about how horrific Vietnam was, right? I mean, Wendy, you're a little bit closer to that generation than I am. But, so the aftermath of that might have been, might have been, you probably have a better understanding of what came out of Vietnam, but it was one of the first times where it was very open that they were trying to work on PTSD. And this gentleman goes in to pull me out of the plane, and that in and of itself was too much for him to live with. And nobody knows exactly what happened to him.
Yeah, I would say it's a shame that I'll say he's a lost soul. We no idea whether or not he's still among us or not in that situation. But it's a good point of reference. The idea that you could survive the atrocities of war, and that was a very that was a guerrilla war in every way, shape, and form. And the idea that villages were just consumed in what occurred in Vietnam. And again, I don't mean for this to be a story about war, but
you're right for saying this. You're right for saying this.
A person survives that, and then is in front of this plane crash comes by, and it's whether it's the final straw or it's the, oh my gosh, the impact of this. It's you never. I've come across car accidents. I've been the first person on scene, and the person, not everybody survived. It is disheartening to be in that scenario and know that people aren't going to make it away from this, and you can't do anything. And this is much more of a mild incident than what we're talking about. Right? If you've seen the plane crash, it is a ball of flame. You have to imagine that flame and human bodies don't go together very well, and both the visual element of that, and there's an aromatic element of that is incredibly distasteful in that space. So yeah, it's tough to go through something like that. So, and again, God bless all the vets that are out there. And just like I said earlier, while we were away, that if you're in need of help, go find help. Right? I think that the number is something like every 22 seconds we lose a vet.
Yes,
by their
and
own.
the reason that there's a phone number. If you just Google my name and just put, and just not, if you don't just put in my name, you put in doctor and then write my name, a profile will pop up, and there's a phone number there that if you call that phone number, my cell phone will ring, and I don't care at the, if I'm able to answer that call, I will take the call.
Very generous.
I do. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not, I don't even think it's on some level, but I think that, I'm a lot healthier right now than I was even a few years ago.
Right.
And it was difficult to work through, but I will say that, I'm a little bit more aware of just how severe of an effect this had on me, to the point where not only did I have a huge crisis in life, but it's literally directed me to assist in any way that I can for other people that are suffering. And I want to throw this out there for a moment. I mention this to Wendy all the time. Wendy points out, and it is true. Most of the time that I've been involved in advocating together with this team, or call it whatever you want, I was not streaming. My real desire is just for, Wendy makes such a good point when he brings up that we're not going to be able to get people out, but we're there to make sure no one goes in. And then, because of the awareness this brings, for me personally, it lends the opportunity for those who are out to reach out for the help that they need. And those I know that there's a few different foundations that are out there that can help. And I just put it out there as well. If you don't feel like calling a foundation, if you feel like calling somebody that you just know who's going to answer, call me. By all means, the foundations that Scientology has are probably better to go to within the context of Scientology, because they'll have a better understanding of what you're going through. But it's like I mentioned before, if you do a brain scan of, let's just say, one of my favorite streamers that's out there, her name is Natalie. What an incredible human being. Wendy's actually good friends with her, but what an incredible human being. But if you were to look at the physiological brain, scanning my brain and scan hers, the brain scan will show up 99.9%, it'll show up identical with regards to trauma. And they know now what it looks like. And so you go through something like that, it has an effect on you forever. So whether it's the Vietnam War, whether it's the plane crash, whether it's Scientology, I want all survivors of trauma to be able to get help as soon as possible. And I like that you said that. It's like every 22 seconds we're losing a vet. It's like sometimes people are like on the cusp. This is the one time I don't like forcing things down people's throat, especially, therapy is not going to work if you don't want to be there anyway. But right. I could not encourage people more. Get help. It's there. It's not a weakness. It's not something to be ashamed of. There are people out there that will support you. My number, anybody that's watching this right now, my number remains the same. It's been the same for years because of this. I don't care that I get spam calls and whatever. I have a little thing that's pretty good at detecting what's spam and what's not. But
Right.
a lot of times, if it's a low-level spam, I'll answer the call, and I'll either hang up or I won't. But I don't care. My phone is ringing all the time. If I only help one person for the rest of my life, I don't, whether it's a family member, whether it's one of the kids in my program that I run, if I just help one person, I'll feel like my life was worthwhile. But at the same time, I will say that this not only affected my mom, somebody that saw what was going on in the crash itself, but it affected my children. You know, I have two beautiful, beautiful, amazing. I don't need, literally by the grace of God, and their mom is incredible. I have two amazing children. When I had those children, um, I was not in crisis. My life was just about as solid as it could be. I wasn't very ostentatious. I would say that the one thing that would let you know that I was pretty good at trading stocks was I had a nice car, a very specific car that I'd always wanted. But and we lived we lived very comfortably. I need to swim a lot for my back, and we lived in a beautiful condo with a pool and all that stuff. And so when we had our kids, you know, it was like neither one of us would even imagine, wouldn't even imagine that I would have gone through the crisis I went through. And I'll even add, up until I met my ex, I had never directly told over the story like firsthand, like as if I was reliving it. That occurred all the time, but when I was younger, I had this ability to get up and speak and tell the story without it's almost as if I was speaking about this 9-year-old boy that existed and something happened to him, and et cetera, et cetera. She really brought it out when I met her. It was one evening I'll never forget, and I was capable of telling her the story, and I was an absolute, I mean, like I couldn't even believe it. I was 18 years old, but I couldn't believe it. You know, it's almost 10 years later, and I mean, I was just destroyed that night, and that lifted me up. Within the next few months, you know, because I was a rebellious teen, I wouldn't say it was a bad crisis. You know, I really wouldn't, because I think I just needed to rebel a little bit. That's not when I say the crisis that I had in life. It's not that. I do believe the plane crash played a role in that, but at that time in my life, it kind of was what it was. And honestly, I think it was God given, because I would never have met my wife. Because in the community I grew up in, you can't speak to, you know, you don't talk to girls until it's time to get married. But the point is that she was capable of helping me tremendously, and therefore we thought everything was perfect. And if you just look at family pictures up until my life really did fall apart, it's just family pictures. And then all of a sudden, and this is not about other people that might be out of shape or overweight. I want to be clear, this next statement is not to knock anybody who looks a certain way, but I was over 300, somewhere between 300 and 350 pounds, and deathly scared that something was going to happen to my kids. I only realized this much later, but when my daughter turned 9 years old, which was the age I was, you can literally track my life. And that's when I began to fall apart. She turned 9, and I didn't know why I lost my mind, but I just literally lost my mind. And the point is, it affected my children. I mean, the plane crash, you know, about 20 years later, 20 plus years
Right.
later, all of a sudden, and it really destroyed a component of my daughter, specifically of her childhood. It was really difficult for her, she was a daddy's girl, you know, and like all of a sudden her daddy was just, I was physically there, but in so many ways I was just missing. I would try to convince them not to go to, we used to have season passes to the amusement park, Great America. I used to try to convince them not to leave the house. I would literally, and at the time I thought that I was right. I would make the argument that it's better for
Were
us
you
to just stay
afraid
in our
that
condo.
something? Yeah. Were you afraid that
Yeah,
a tragedy would befall them? Yeah.
deathly afraid. And I do realize now, looking back, that I felt that way, but it wasn't until 2016, which was after I started getting better, that it was so clear that that's what was going on. So clear. You know, the service pistol that I had, which is like a standard issued, you know, the Desert Eagle. It was like I would leave the house to pick my daughter up from school if I could, take her to school if I could, but I just was absolutely terrified that something was going to happen to my wife and my children. Absolutely terrified. And it was about that age that my son was 1. And, you know, it's almost a blessing that he doesn't have the memories of me being a total disaster. And therefore, it's easier for my son and I to connect on whatever level we connect. Me and my daughter, by no means are we disconnected. I want to make that clear. And I think it's important to make clear because, you know, especially within the I know a lot of the viewers, you guys understand Scientology and the disconnection they have with families. There's none of that. But it's difficult for my daughter. It's difficult. My presence in her life, you know, the famous saying, and I'm not saying that this was completely me, but the famous saying is sometimes to truly love someone, you've got to be a stranger. Sometimes the best way that you could show love to someone is making sure that you don't affect them negatively. And I started living by that motto. And I was it wasn't a conscious thing at the time, but I was literally doing everything I could to literally destroy myself so that I was automatically separated from my family.
Yeah. And
it was
again, I'm going to tell you, I am not a doctor. I'm going to say I hopefully am a compassionate human being. But the idea that no child wants to see their father falling apart is the way that you described it, and understandably so. I'm not saying anything there, but that's so you're going through something that is causing you to act differently, and your children are seeing this different activity, and it just becomes this spiral. And I would say that many among us are probably very accustomed to parents and children for many less traumatic reasons have differences and have difficulties amongst them, that they struggle in their relationship. But to think about the things that you went through in this situation, and I don't think you put your daughter through something. I think that something that you went through impacted your daughter, right? The best I can say in that. Again, not a doctor, not a therapist.
No, you're correct. You're correct. It's something that I needed to come to grips with because I had this therapist that I thought was totally correct. Oh, no, you know, the rest of the survivors didn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I come to find that every single one of them absolutely did, each in their own way, of course, but they absolutely did. I mean, I was blown away. This is public information. The article was posted on July 19th this year. And he says publicly in the speech, he must have gotten permission from Susan Light. I had no idea, no clue that she had ever gone through anything. No clue. I did not know that the captain's children had gone through anything. And I come to find out, you know, how much his daughter was affected, the captain's daughter. And, you know, there's a certain amount that I just, you know, one of the questions I ask people that I'm close with, I always ask them, if you could, would you like turn back time and go back to like any specific moment in time? And, you know, people that I'm connected to give good answers to that question. It could, you know, so many people have different answers. For me, it's not like I'm worried about getting older or, you know, some of my friends right now are going through a midlife crisis because, you know, they're in their early 40s or whatever. But for me, it's not about that. I would go back just to tweak those tiny things.
Right.
I would not even go back to take away the plane crash necessarily, but I would go back to do anything I could to have made sure that my daughter was protected from what she had to experience.
Yep. My expectation is the vast majority of people, it's not the trauma that befell them that they need to remove, because it is part of who made them who they are. But you're right. It's the times when your life adversely impacted somebody else. Those are the things that I wish I could take those things back. Right. Whether, just sometimes it's as simple as I was angry and I said something I shouldn't have said in that situation. But the idea that you're a protective father. What father doesn't want to not harm their child or to remove harm from their child? So it makes perfectly good sense that, I don't want the accident to go away. I want some of my poor reactions to the accident to go away. And again, I don't mean to imply that you actively had a poor reaction to the accident, that trauma befell you.
You're spot on, Wendy. You're spot on. Nothing that you said is, if anything, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Like, actually, a lot of people want to shut down. Like, they want to say, Israel, it's not your fault. But you're saying it the best way that it could be said, and I appreciate that. Actually, it is very much that. And my daughter's older now, and she's going through and I literally pray and cry and just beg. I really, I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I believe that I have a connection with God. I believe, in Judaism, we don't go through again, not knocking anybody else's religion, but we don't go through a rabbi to talk to God. It's famously, in Judaism, it's your relationship with God. Going to synagogue there's a whole purpose behind that, but it's not, you don't need to go to synagogue to connect with God, to speak to God, to get forgiveness, whatever it is. I'm just pointing out that, there's 3 times a day where I'm literally, ever since I really, got through it and came out the other end and putting my life back together, there's 3 times a day where I literally feel completely broken. And I allow myself to feel that way during those times. And it helps. I truly believe it helps even myself. But I allow myself to do that. I allow myself to experience that pain, because if I don't allow myself to experience that pain, it will get bottled up just like it did for 20 years. And then it will come out like crazy. So my big thing with my daughter is I think we were talking about this. I had brought it up. We were talking about this the other day when I was sitting with you and Mindy, and I really appreciated what you guys had said. You and Mindy just brought up the notion that there are fathers out there that just disappear, and the kids just wish that they could, I just wish my dad had just showed up to my birthday. I just wish my dad. Now, during that really difficult time, I'm sure my daughter has experiences where it's like, I wish my dad would have been more, whatever. But the one thing I do is, there's no way that she does not know how much I love her and how much I would do absolutely anything for her. I give her as much space as I possibly can for her to be able to experience life in the best way possible. But behind the scenes, I'm obviously making sure that everything is perfect in her world. And I don't want to get into too much detail. She's a very private person, but she's going on to some big things in life right now, some beautiful things in life right now. And I'm so proud that she came out at the other end the way she did. I'm so proud of her. And I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for her to watch her dad just literally. It went from, it's called parentification. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that term, but it's an important one. It's like you go from being, your hero, there was this picture frame that she had given, that my ex gave me, and it said my hero on the picture frame. I went from her hero, who was constantly saying, are you good? Are you good? Is everything okay? And then we're all of a sudden in a situation where she's coming home from school and coming into my bedroom first, right away. Daddy, are you okay? Daddy, are you okay? She has to sit in school. She has to walk around worrying about whether or not her dad is okay. That's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair to a 9-year-old kid.
I'll agree with
It's
that. No,
not fair.
what I'm gonna say that it it's befallen her. You did not cause this, right? And I'm not trying to absolve you or anything of that. And I understand that you feel the impact of it, and it's no different than the person that was sitting in the seat next to you on the plane, right? That the guilt you have there as well. You did not kill anybody that was on that plane, right? You happen to be somebody who was in the vicinity. It's part of your story and everything. Think about that as she's having these great parts of her life come up right now. You're still half of the two people that created her, and she's strong because of you,
Oh,
right?
so thank you for getting. That's the point I actually want. What I wanted to say was this: there are people that disappear. My daughter experienced leadership, but this I know, and this is recent. Both Wendy and Mindy, you guys happened to make the comment that day when you were sitting there. Um, you, you know, um, Mindy asked me a great question. Mindy just said, like, do you at least make sure that she knows? And I couldn't. I overwhelm her with messages and
Right.
talking to her as much as I possibly can. She knows that I love her more than anything in the world. And that gives me some solace that she knows that. She knows I didn't do this on purpose. She knows, it was unintentional. She understands that her baby brother doesn't even have the same, memories that she does. But um, there's just a component where I really feel like it's not fair um, to them, and I just wish, I don't wish anything. Like, there's the only thing I really say that I wish I could turn back time is, you know, listen, everything is meant to be the way it's meant to be. My ex moved on in life, and that's beautiful and everything like that. But theoretically, if I could go back and just hold that together, it's like I'm just throwing this out as an example. Anybody that's watching this that knows me, I'm actually going to share a little bit here right now, some very personal info. But if you would have taken, let's say, 100 of my friends and ranked which ones might get divorced in life, this is what people say to me: "You're the last couple that we ever thought would have ever gotten divorced. The last, not
Right.
like the statistics, like what one, and it happened, and I affected her, and I took an amazing human being and ran her through. Again, I went from being we had a very traditional relationship. I have no problem with some of the other type of relationships that exist in the world and stuff like that. But it was I was the man, you know, she was the woman. It was a very traditional relationship. And it went from me being the protector and the one that's making sure that everything's perfect. And all of a sudden, everything becomes her responsibility. Just paying bills, making sure bills get paid, like all of a sudden became her responsibility. And I don't want to talk too much about my ex because she's a very private person as well, but it would be unfair for me not to point out that I put her through living hell, and I would do anything I could to take that back.
Let's consider intent, though, right? That this was not
Right.
intent. That she happened to be the person that was affected by what you were going through, and that there are plenty of people who intentionally cause pain for their partners in life, right? This is not what we're talking about here. That and again, I'm going to say that you're very gracious in understanding that you wish that you had not impacted the way you had, but I will again reiterate, you didn't cause something upon her. Something that befell you touched her, right? Contaminated, overflowed too in that space. You weren't somebody who was trying to be ignorant, mean. This isn't the wife beater story. This isn't the misogynistic story that you'll sometimes hear about people.
No, not at all, not at all. And I feel blessed that she knows that too. She does know that, and that's why I say, like, turning back time. It's not like whatever's going on in anybody in my family's life is what it's supposed to be. I would just take away that pain
Right.
that I feel like, what, let's say that was caused. What
Mhm. Yep.
yes, I was the vehicle in which it affected, but we could just refer to it as pain that was caused. So I agree at this point, and I understand that now, but I didn't for a very long time. I was a doctor of clinical psychology, with zero awareness that I should have been in therapy at that time.
The cobbler's
Zero
children has
awareness.
no shoes, right? The cobbler's children has no shoes. So, that something that you had kind of hit on this, that you consistently show your daughter love, and that there are two arms available anytime that she wants to take advantage of that. And I want to kind of pull it around. Typically, we're a Scientology channel, and it's something that I remember hearing Aaron talk about last night, was the idea that when somebody calls and says, I've got a family member in Scientology, I want to get them out, what do I do? His response was pretty much nothing. Just show them that you love them and you're willing. Let somebody else be that person that is confronting, or let somebody else be the protagonist in this. You just make sure that if the opportunity arises, you're ready there and ready and there with open arms, right?
It's a great point, and I go back to this, and I'm sure he is including this component. It's like you're not going to be able to do a lot, especially when you're dealing with high control groups, cults, and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to do a lot. But what I always tell people is, if you're a family member and you're concerned about something with regards to another family member or somebody else, you seek help too. Because if you're concerned enough to have a desire to fix something in your family, it means that you're in pain on some level as well. Don't be scared to seek out therapy. It's not a weakness. Like, I can't stress that enough. It's not a weakness. Some of the most powerful human beings I've ever met in my life sit in front of me with what they refer to as flaws, and I just refer to as reality.
Absolutely.
Seek out that help. Like you mentioned Aaron, it's called the SPTV Foundation, right?
SPTV Foundation.
Aaron?
After, I don't want to throw shit, that the idea that if you need help and you don't want to go to SPTV Foundation, go to Aftermath, right? There are people on the
That's
outside
the other one, yeah.
that want to set you up in life. It's if you're in Scientology, and again, I'm going to say we have a smaller audience tonight. If you're under the radar, you want out. Any of us can help you in this space. Now, not directly, but we can point you in the right direction in regards to helping you in this space, and that there is life on the outside, and the life on the outside is better. You'll be a better you. Right now, you're somebody who Scientology wants you to be. You don't realize that, but you're a puppet on a string.
I always say this. When I came to the realization about Scientology, I was streaming one time, and anybody that's been in my chat will know this. What I like to say is, in Scientology, your identity is one of two things. Either you're born in Scientology and you lack an identity because you are not allowed to grow up with one, or you got sucked in and they strip you of your identity. And that is a fact. That is a fact. They absolutely despise identity. Like, you're not allowed to be yourself.
Yep. No individualism.
Yeah,
That's the most noticeable element of if you're somebody who joins, you're captivated by Scientology, you're going to notice that very quickly you're stripped of your reality. If you're born in, you're stripped of your reality, but the thing is, you didn't know it because your parents were already indoctrinating you kind of before the age of reason, that your reason was brought up that way. If you're a college student and you are enamored by what's going on there, I can tell you exactly how things are going to go. They're going to associate you to a group, help you understand that the group is stronger than the individual, and now you should be more like them rather than exerting your individualism in this space. And then you feel stuck to the group, right? It's the Borg, right? If I kill myself, I kill the Borg, right?
Correct. I couldn't say it better than that. And for all my friends out there who watch this and who have thought that it's kind of weird, one of my classmates like thought it was crazy that I'm involved in this, and he actually was aware of what some of this stuff was, and
Right.
he made it. There were two classmates. One of them was talking to me about a connection that he had with somebody else, which was really cool. The other classmate of mine said, I didn't, also I didn't know you were doing this, but I know what Scientology is, and wow, this is awesome. It was
Right.
direct. It was a very, they were very open about the fact that they were proud that I was doing this.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I really do like that. So I just want to we're getting a room raid from Oh No Nora. Thank you so much, Nora. I really appreciate that. I just kind of want to give everybody a fair warning that we're talking about a fairly heavy topic this evening. So we're talking with a survivor of United Airlines Flight 232, which crashed in Sioux City, Iowa, in 1989. The reason that this is showing up on our channel is that this person that survived, Yisroel Brownstein, across from me, he is one of the protesters here in Chicago. So you would have probably first seen him on Shannon's channel, and then he and I would talk, and he was somebody who would just come out and protest all the time, well before he would stream. But I just wanted to kind of set the stage for people coming in from you're joining us in the middle. It's a compelling story about what's going on, but just
And this is the second installment. I mean, Wendy has been doing such a phenomenal job in guiding me through this interview, and I highly recommend that you watch the first one on the replay and this one as well. But yes, that is. Thank you for the thank you for making sure people know what's going on.
One thing, a couple of things that we've got a couple of questions here, and I think that we've kind of hit on them, but I still want to call them out here, right? That so Tony's talking about this idea that generational trauma, but more important, the second sentence is something that you've wanted to talk about as well. Can you see this? I'm sorry. So Israel, there is a There's also
my eyes. These are guys. These are my actual glasses. Just to let you guys all know it. Same true blood through the grades. The same for the captain's daughter. Yes, that is. Yes. For right now, all I'll say is yes. And what I'll say is that there's a number of us survivors that are going to be attending to that specific topic.
Right.
I got to know her a lot better by the captain's memorial. After he passed away, which was like it was like a military, it was a big deal. And I met and I had met her before, but I met her as an adult at that time, and it was extremely powerful, and she's an amazing human being. But I can't imagine what she went through, because the captain, the survivor's guilt that he had, that anyone I was allowed to talk to him in the hospital. I was one of the few people. And that's all he was hanging from the ceiling, but all he was concerned about was everybody else. That's all he was concerned about.
And but that would have been that there's a human element of that, right? That as a human being, that is what it is. But also that his job, he was the captain. He is responsible for every soul on that board, on that plane, and he. By the way, we're not using soul in a religious or spiritual manner here. It just happens to be that in the airline industry, it's the number of beating hearts on a plane is the number of souls that are going to be reported in that space. But he is responsible for every soul on that plane, and he absolutely he feels the responsibility as a job, and he feels the responsibility as a human being who was most in control. When he did not cause this accident. He probably without him, there's plenty more people that would not have survived this particular.
We would not. There would without him. This is no exaggeration. Without him, it was just a goal for him to find a place where he wasn't going to also kill civilians. That's how extreme it was. It wasn't like maybe. Right. Once he realized the severity of the issue, at first it was like, how am I going to do this in the most humane way possible? After that, when he started using techniques that he had known from the military and other stuff, it became he didn't believe he was going to survive, but he believed that he could potentially save others on the plane. And I think it really, really, really destroyed him that so many people died, but he survived. The cockpit was crushed from 7 feet to 3 feet. And in the cockpit, you guys can hear it on the black box. He was like, he says he was just like out of it, completely like dazed. And then he heard someone kind of like wincing in pain. And he said to one of his fellow captains on board, he said, like, so it was like pitch black, and he wanted to know if the like, are we in a waiting room like in heaven? Like, he literally thought that, and that was very real. And then when he survived, and he helped me so much in life. He was just always there for me. He was just always there for me. And I think that he already had that understanding of the notion that no matter how great things are, that things will eventually on some level fall apart so that you can build yourself back up. And he did his best to help me. And I really have to say that I'm blessed that prior to his passing, I was already back on the way, putting my life back together. So he played such a tremendous role in my life. I was in such an extremely religious community, not abusive, very, very, just grew up very religious. And, we don't believe like everybody else needs to be just like us or anything like that. It's not like that, but we were very religious. I didn't grow up with any media, social media. I mean, no television, radios, nothing. And the high school I went to, it's literally like, for sure, top 5, not just in America, in the world. When I went to graduate school, their only question on my interview, they kept pointing to the paper and they said, so you actually graduated from this high school, this one, the one on Foster. That was their main, because they knew, analytically speaking, from the Talmud, it was a very difficult school. It's very right wing. And when the rabbis saw me struggling too much, they would get the captain on the phone. And he was always ready to take that phone call, always.
That's pretty impressive. And again, that benefit is a wrong way to say this, but you can't take a flight without somebody singling you out, especially not on American, but I'm pretty sure that on most airlines, you don't get to take a flight without being called out.
They know immediately. They always know the captains always. For the next time, I'll send you some funny pictures over the years. You could see me younger all the way till today, where the captains always come out. And I remember during COVID, I was flying, and there was some rule about the captains not being near the passengers. They basically waited till the entire plane. I didn't know why they were waiting, and I needed wheelchair assistance at that time. I had a spinal surgery, and the captains had waited in the cockpit till the cleaning crew had even left, so they could come out and take a picture with me. Awesome. I mean, to become a pilot today, you have to go through a simulator of what my cap did, to save. And I like you call it the souls. It's a spiritual thing. It's not, there's, and like I said, I'm going to connect some things, Wendy, eventually. So you're actually hitting upon a bunch of phenomenal things. What I'll share with everybody is I also was in one other extremely traumatic event besides the plane crash. So my mother gets that phone call / hearing on the radio, no survivors. When I was overseas, there was kind of the aftermath of the Intifada. And please, I don't want to talk about any politics. It's not about politics here. But I was overseas, and I was in a horrific accident where I was run over by a bus, and this is 10 years later. And my mother once again got that phone call where my father describes it, that she got a phone call and she just dropped. She just completely dropped. And even in Sioux City, when I went to see the medical records in 2016, they're like, which Brownstein? And I said, no, I was flying alone. And they're like, well, we have 2 records. And that's because when my mom found out I was alive, they quickly got her on a flight to Sioux City. But then when she came to see me, and I'm sitting there in a bubble like E.T., anybody who's seen the movie will understand what I'm saying. She fainted, and she herself ended up needing treatment in the hospital because of that. But I was in another horrific accident, and there are some tremendous connections between the two. And I'm going to tell you eventually something extremely powerful with regards to the daughter of the man that I feel the guilt for taking his life, but it was a choice he made to save mine. And it goes back to what we were talking about, these heroes. I mean,
Right.
Susan and Donna literally sat with the gentleman sitting next to me and the captain to devise a way for me to live. This is not like, this is like 100%. And the connection between that and what happened to me later on in life, when I eventually explain it, it'll take a moment for me to explain it, is beyond. It's like, when I speak, and a lot of people in my community know what I've been through, I refer to this as unavoidable spirituality. So it doesn't have to be about religion, but there's a certain unavoidable spiritual component to what I've been through, and and that's the way the captain lived his life, and it's the way that Richard Howard Sudlow, may he rest in peace, the man, the angel, literally an angel sitting next to me in my community, they would walk around and say that, like, they really believed that he was an angel. And at one point there was a book, and the story was written in this Jewish book, and the story had been told so many times that in the book it said that they never found the man sitting next to me, like literally as if like he didn't exist. Obviously that's not the story, but the reason I was happy when I read that was because it kind of was like that. It really was. It was kind of like, I mean, his ability to just give up his life like that, and yeah, he probably recognized that I was going to have survivor's guilt as well, but he knew he wasn't making it. He knew it.
Yep. That's absolutely fair. All right. I've got two questions, but I want to let everybody, there's two questions I've still got on the board here. If you do have a question, please, feel free, reach out, ask the question. We're going to try and set aside some time because we've been pushing information this whole time. Hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation that Yisroel and I have had, minus the fact that it was a fairly traumatic scenario. But I also want to say, hey, Renoir 360, thank you so much for gifting the memberships, and I saw several of the people. Thank you for receiving that. Very, very generous, and I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Good for you guys. Awesome.
Yisroel, what is something that you wish someone would have told you when you were a young father before you had the awareness of how it was affecting your family?
Phenomenal question. I don't believe anyone would have been able to tell me. What I believe is that what I wish is that when the rabbis, even after I rebelled, the rabbis that I had in high school, there was one in grade school and one in high school that I was very close with. And even though I rebelled pretty severely against the community that I came from, we never disconnected even on any level. I was on the phone with them all the time. I wish I would have understood exactly what they meant, because my life looked perfect as a young father. Throughout my 20s, you couldn't have asked for a better life. I mean that. I mean, really, there was no concern financially. There was no concern. I was a doctor of clinical psychology. My daughter, as a little girl, was coming every day, getting on the train just to have fun, to come pick me up from graduate school. I started jujitsu very early on in life. My daughter was throwing arm bars by the time she was 3 years old. I just wish that somebody would have said, Yisroel, you need to be in therapy forever, no matter what, no matter how healthy you think you are. You need to seek out therapeutic services forever. You cannot live your life without that assistance. Now, there are people that don't believe that you need necessarily talk therapy. For each their own. For me, talk therapy is extremely effective. For me, personally, I'm just saying it's the assistance and the willingness to just recognize, just because I feel amazing right now, that I don't know what's going to be in a very short period of time. And it's really sad. I had gotten out of therapy thinking that I was solid, and
I'm fixed.
All of a sudden,
done. Right?
That's a great question, YG. Great question. Phenomenal question. Never forget, you have children. Never ever take your eye off of them, not just on a physical level, but on an emotional and psychological level. Don't take your eye off of them for 1 second. Don't take your eye. There needs to be an absolute commitment that, of course, you're going to go through life and you'll have enjoyments and you'll have stuff too. But there needs to be this commitment. If you're going to have children, this is my opinion, it needs to be a commitment where you're going to do any and everything possible to make sure that their life is as perfect as it could be. But as they say, easy, strong, difficult times create strong people. Strong people create easy times. Easy times create weaker people. Weaker people create bad times. And then bad times come back around and create stronger people. That's the history of the world, that literally as we've seen it. It
Right.
was always, when I realized that I needed all the help that I realized once I really started getting better. And I mark it 2013 was when I really started working on myself. But about 2016 is when I really started. And what I'll say is, I wish that saying wasn't true. What I mean by that is, I wish that people would just recognize what I just said, that hard times equals, and therefore never ever let your eye off of it, and make sure your kids know. You might have easy times, you might think it is, but you need to recognize how hard life can be. And that's the only way that you'll lead till the next generation making it easy times. And
Yep.
and yeah.
I like that, right? The idea that there's a cyclical nature to the universe, right? That's the way that it is. So, got another question here, and I'm going to cheat you on this one. I'm going to answer a little bit here, but it may not be fair, but it's absolutely 100% the human experience. I've never met anybody who got anyone who got a fair life. One of the things that I keep on getting reminded of is that I'll apologize because I thought something else is going to happen on a given day, and something else happened, and we reacted, and that's how life went through, right, in that spot. So we're never guaranteed anything, and the idea that you're going to have an easy life, to the earlier statement, what is an easy life, and do you really want an easy life? Challenge is really that's when you want to think about great sculpture, it's because it was a hard piece of rock, right? That in those spaces, and that the unfairness is what makes life livable and unique, right? Or that desirable, livable, and strivable. All right, your turn.
It's crazy that that statement was quoted that way. But I was recently talking to the head rabbi in Chicago. I don't speak to him every day, but I was very close with him when I was younger, and we still have a very strong relationship. And I was talking to him about something, and I got emotional about it. And I said to the rabbi these words. I said, it was a little bit in Yiddish, but literally, at the end I said, "It's not fair. It's just not fair." And he waited for me to be done, and then he said, "You of all people know just how unfair things can be." That was his response. He just, he knows everything about my life, and he knows the 3 extremely traumatic events that I randomly were a part of. But yeah, life is not fair. And sometimes people say, well, for you, it was truly I actually agree with the statement that, like, it's not like a contest of who experienced the
My
most trauma.
trauma was better than yours. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I say to my siblings and about my siblings on a regular basis. And I want to start off by saying that, but then I'll say this. My mother and father, but my mother in particular, she absolutely has worse, more severe, more complex PTSD than I do. She absolutely does. The plane crash, the bus accident, what was going on overseas when I was there 10 years, not 10, a few years after that.
Right.
My mother's experience of knowing her child, I can't imagine it, because in my situation, I have a little bit more of awareness, and I do my best with my children. With my mother, there's just this unbelievable tragedy that's so constant that she's always the reason that I speak to her all the time is because if I don't speak to her for like a month and then I call her, she'll pick up the phone. What happened? What? Like immediately. And
Right.
she's dead serious. She's like
Yep.
shaking, because she got that phone call. Your son's, I mean, four times in my life, my mom got a phone call that I was gone. Four times, four separate
That's tragic.
times. Yeah.
I will tell you that when I'm not somebody who talks to my parents a lot, and I don't, that we were just individuals, right? And I love my parents and everything. My mother always worried, and any time that I would call her, my first statement was, "I'm all right. Hi, Mom. How are you doing?" Right? Because it was that her fear was the only reason that anybody would call her or that I would call her was that something was wrong. So. Amy was able to remind everybody of the quote that you put up there: "The hard times create strong men." Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, that's the
Another
actual quote. You did it. Yeah, that
Yep.
was cool. Yeah.
That this is Tony just saying thank you, and again, I feel honored that Yisroel felt comfortable that we could talk about this, and I've enjoyed the time that we've spent together. Hopefully, you have as well, and I know that we haven't had the world's largest audience, but it's I think it's been important information in regards to, hey, there's somebody in our circle of friends who has a pretty impressive and amazing story that's going on.
And it's going to reach without getting into like any details at all. All I could say is that it's going to reach many, many more people, and therefore, what's happening right now, it's cool that you guys are here to experience this with me and with Wendy, because very soon, for various reasons, a lot of eyes are going to be on this, and Wendy is doing. We're not even close to done, but Wendy is doing a phenomenal job and of keeping me also on track. Because when it comes to the trauma, it's like everything's just like, it's just like whatever I'm thinking in that moment is flooding. If I'm talking about my mom, then I'm talking about, I could sometimes lose track a little bit. And I'll just say this one thing, how true it was, some of the statements that were made. And I said, what did Amy just say? I'm just curious. Had she said
she wishes that others SPTV would also cover this.
Oh, would cover my interview. Okay, thank you. I know, Amy. Thank you. I'm sure they will. I really am sure they will. And a lot of the people that I'm connected to yeah. And listen, Natalie's going through a difficult time. So it's, she did respond to me one time when I wrote her an email, and it was a beautiful response. And so I know she's aware, and it all in the right time. Natalie, I'll say it straight up. I'll say, Natalie, if you ever see this, I can't say that I know your exact pain, but I understand it and I connect with it. And it's been powerful to see you going through it. And it helps people like me to have the willingness to share those really difficult experiences in life. And I appreciate that on a tremendous level.
I like that.
So what I wanted to say before I understand was just like, the most important thing to me is when you're going through life, there's that other famous saying, like, in life, any open doors, walk through them. Any closed doors. Didn't you mention this the other day, Wendy?
I don't know if I would have said this, but I'm going to say open, right? If it's closed door, open it.
Yeah. Well, they say try to open it if it was closed. Yeah. If it's locked, move on to the next door and walk through that one, and so it's exactly that. It's like doors closed. Well, hold on a second. And it goes back to, I've told you that I think that the serenity prayer happens to be a very powerful one, talking about what you're in control of, not in control of, and then most importantly, having the ability and to recognize the difference between what you're in control of and when you're not in control of. But I'll say that I've always lived my life. It's not like my mind was ever taken off the plane crash. When I closed my eyes and went to sleep, the only years that I slept even remotely comfortably was when I was married. my ex is a phenomenal human being, and again, she likes to keep things private, and I want to, give her those wishes. I'm speaking about myself right now. It was during those times I was able to just like sleep in a bed and just not, yeah, I mean, but even during those times, I should have recognized that I could so easily, fall out of that mode of just like life is smooth, life is good, and because it hit everybody hard. And yes, life's not fair, and it goes back to that statement that was made before. It's true, because it's not just like life was not fair to me. I mean, even if I just look in my circle, this became unfair to my entire family. This became unfair to my kids. And the rabbi that I was recently speaking to, he just, when I said that statement, I think that he was brilliant by saying to me, yeah. And that more as well as anybody, if whatever his exact words were. So I try to live my life in a way where I try to I try to be aware of not only my actions, but how are my actions affecting other people? Which is why having the role of an activist and sitting outside, let's just say sitting outside of the org with Wendy, I actually am, and people that are in my chat, they'll know this. I'll start going into deep dives about psychology and the pain that some of these people are going through. But while we're standing there, it's a bunch of people that are actively doing their part in life to help others and to ensure that other people live as fair of a life as possible. And that's what makes it so important at the end of the day. And like Wendy knows this, I've been in the world of activism for since for a long time, but I did it even when I was younger. I used to act. There was a lot of people I would advocate for when I was very younger. But make a long story short, once I was in graduate school, before my doctorate, once I got my master's, I was all of a sudden advocating for a number of different people. It was whoever I had reached, and it's not like I thought they needed more advocation. It was just that's what I was able to advocate for. So there's a tremendous connection with within the context of Scientology, because the second that I saw Shannon, Wendy, and trashy BMW V12, when I saw you guys out there, it was just this amazing opportunity for me personally to get out there and act based upon this. And I want to live my life that way. I want to be aware of what I can do, and accept what I can't, but what I can do.
Yep. Agreed. And Patrick's reminding us of the Serenity Prayer. And Amy mentioned When Bad Things Happen to Good People as a great book. Quick one here. So this, I just think this is cute and funny. And also one of the things about your mom struggles quite a bit with this is the idea that the crash impacted you. You have total control, total control as possible to help you. Your mother can't. Your mother can only observe a loved one in pain, and this I think is a very true statement, right? That I'm going to say I don't know who Dr. Shanique is, but I'm going to say that every doctor probably has a similar statement to this nature. That if your child's sick and you go to the doctor, he'll say to the mother, "Your child will be better before you are."
Right. Johnny Depp was one. John very famously, he goes to hospitals and he dresses up as a pirate. And one day someone gave him a compliment and said, it's an amazing thing that you go in these kids that have like terminal illnesses, and what an amazing thing you're doing. And he stopped and he looked at the person and he said, I don't go for the kids. I'm going there for the parents. The kids are strong. The parents are suffering. If they see their kids smile, it helps them. I'm there for the parents. That's what he said. And that was brilliant to me. And I felt like that he was dead on about that. So yes, that statement is very true.
I love it. We had talked about, I remember you brought up that story, but I had mentioned that whenever I'm around friends and there's a small a toddler, right? When a toddler falls, stumbles, falls on his bottom, maybe bumps his head, whatever that case is, they really don't understand that they're in pain. It's every adult in the area makes this reaction. And that reaction is really what the child typically, by the way, if your child falls over and bumps their head, take them to the doctor. I'm not saying that the child's not hurt, but what I will say is that it's really, really important that we realize that people react to how you react. They respond to the way that you react in these situations. So
it is so true. You've actually said that to me in the past, and the first time you ever said it to me, it's brilliant, and it's so true. It's like when you're like, oh my gosh, then the kid all of a sudden starts crying, and you'll almost see it in real time. Like they'll scrape their knee, and they're kind of okay, and then in real time, all of a sudden, they begin to cry. Yep. Exactly.
All right, folks. We got one last question for Yisroel. By the way, don't worry. We're going to come back. We're going to continue this conversation. We've got more topics to talk about here. But me and Taz has a question. Yisroel, have you ever thought about writing a book?
I am absolutely in the midst of it. I'm waiting for the right author to assist me in finish writing the book. But I wrote a dissertation, which is a book in and of itself, and I talked about teenagers that struggle. But I'm kind of close to. I'm not done because it needs to be tweaked, but the outline is there. I read this book as a child. Catcher in the Rye. I'm sure everybody has heard of that book, but when I read that book,
one of the banned books,
yeah, that book really, it gave me, when I reread it, it gave me the desire. So it's a great question because it gave me the desire to actually continue and make sure that the book is written. And if it reaches one person, just like I said before, I'll feel like I have done something phenomenal.
Yeah. With the idea of self-publishing these days, I do think it's a good idea that you do that just keep writing the words. And if you want somebody to edit audio, pause something real quick. If you need somebody to audit it, that's fine. But I would still say just write the words, get it down. That's the hard part.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Absolutely correct.
Let's see here. What is this? This is, I think that's Patrick. This is something that I find very, very funny. The very first, the oldest child, right, or the first child that a parent has, it's a glass doll that everything in the world, right? Oh my gosh, these things are so precious. You can't do anything. And I come from the school that babies bounce, right? That kids are just really, really resilient in that space. And then that the same couple, their second child, right? They grab them by one leg and they're just whipping around the world type thing, because you realize that, wait, it's not this glass thing. And it's great that we think that children are precious, and they are precious. They're just not as fragile as we think they are. Right.
It's absolutely correct. They're more fragile for the psychological components, things that you wouldn't think they're so fragile for before their brain is fully developed. But physically, it's unbelievable that, again, I personally believe in God. And so I'm just going to say it like this, but it could be on any level of a higher power. It's just like, it's unbelievable the way that the body heals itself. And I myself, my doctors told me, you won't have any use of your arm. You'll have about 3% use, but we're going to put it back on, so aesthetically it'll be good. Meanwhile, I ended up with 97%. But that's a cool story. I'll come back to a different time. But the point is that, we're very resilient. Yes.
We had talked about this before. When I was much younger, I was hit by a car and had some knee injury. And the doctor said, well, you'll never walk without a cane again. And I'm like, BS. I'm never.
Let me tell you, after the other day with Wendy and Mindy, I promise you this man can walk.
Nice. Chris, I have great news. You're here and you're going to be able to hear a great story, and you'll see your comment on this great story. But we're just now finishing up with Yisroel. We've gone through the second chapter of our little conversation here. But really love you being in here. And any last things you want to talk about, Israel? Before again, we are going to have another conversation. We'll have another conversation. So again,
Yeah, I just want to segue. I just want to say that, in this moment, I just, one of the most important things, one of the things that helps me continue, and I had my best friend is literally like a brother to me. Most people think he is my brother. He's a rabbi in Israel. We're very different people, and it doesn't matter. We speak every night for about 2 to 3 hours, which is the morning time by him. And we've recently been studying about gratitude. Very recently. I hope he sees this. He doesn't go on social media, but he's been watching. He's been watching the interview.
Nice.
So, we spoke about this last night, and I just want to say that, just look around. There's always something to be positive about. There's always a way for you to get through things. Seek help, no question about it. But, I was talking to him last night, and right now I'm at a point in my life where I'm kind of really frustrated with myself with regards to how I affected my daughter. But then we were talking about some of the amazing aspects of things, and how, he's like an uncle legit to her. And he was just pointing out how I'm focusing on these things. And then he said, once in a while on the phone, you'll say, I'm so proud of her. And it's like, dude, you have that. Like, I have that amazing thing. And if we focus on that, you'll start to recognize all the things that are connected to that. And you'll have an appreciation of the world around you like you didn't have before. And you could do that on a daily basis. Recently, Wendy shared with me that he was going to the wilderness to have a little bit of time. I'm one of the biggest proponents of going out there. I think I think going out there and just getting in tune with nature just reminds you that this world is an amazing place.
Yep, agreed. And get connected to people and the big rock that we're on, right?
Yes, absolutely correct. Yes.
All right, Patrick. So there's some interesting news, and I haven't vetted this. I'm gonna, Patrick hasn't led me astray yet, but it looks like David Gentile, he's a Scientology whale. He's apparently under investigation for one of his investment companies. But what I really, I'm sure that we're going to hear about it from Aaron soon, and we'll probably hear about it on Natalie's channel in the morning. If you could all do me a favor, and again, Yisroel, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Really love that you shared your story. Trust sharing your story with me.
Thank you.
I would love if we could all head over to Declared Dave and give him a little bit of a room raid. He's going to be talking about, so he's got some more Scientology show and tell for us today.
I'm going there now.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.